The F-14 Tomcat could track 24 targets simultaneously while engaging 6. Its Phoenix missiles reached 100 miles before enemy fighters knew they were being hunted. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, Congress saw a $38,000 per hour operating cost instead of capability. The Navy retired the fleet in 2006, betting everything on the Super Hornet. Iran still flies them. They understood what Washington forgot. Air superiority isn't measured in budget spreadsheets. It's measured in who controls the sky when it matters most. The F-14 represented one kind of specialization. The F-111 Aardvark embodied another: terrain-following radar that let crews fly at 500 feet in total darkness. It carried more ordnance than a B-17 and hit targets with surgical precision during Desert Storm. But variable geometry wings cost money to maintain. The Air Force chose the F-15E instead, retiring the Aardvark in 1998. Australia kept theirs until 2010 and never regretted it. They knew what Pentagon accountants didn't. Some capabilities can't be replicated by making other aircraft do more jobs. Specialization wins wars. While the F-111 pioneered terrain following, the A-6 Intruder owned the night from carrier decks. Its all-weather attack capability made carrier strike groups lethal in conditions that grounded everything else. Crews flew through storms that would terrify modern pilots, delivering ordnance on target without GPS. The Navy retired it in 1997, claiming the Super Hornet could do the job. But the Super Hornet carries half the payload and lacks the Intruder's dedicated bombardier navigator. Bad weather doesn't care about budget consolidation. Neither do enemies who know when you can't fly. Electronic warfare isn't glamorous until someone needs it. The F-111 Raven jammed enemy radars so effectively that strike packages flew through defended airspace like it was empty sky. When the Air Force retired it in 1998, they promised the Navy's A-6B Prowler would cover the gap. But joint service operations create dependencies. When the Navy's busy, the Air Force waits. Iraq and Afghanistan proved you can't schedule electronic warfare around carrier availability. Organic capabilities matter. Borrowed ones disappear when you need them most. The Raven jammed radars. The SR-71 simply outran them. Mach 3.2 at 85,000 feet. No enemy ever shot one down because nothing could catch it. Satellites were supposed to replace it, but satellites follow predictable orbits. The Blackbird went where it wanted, when it wanted. The Air Force retired it in 1998 to save $200 million annually. Then, 9/11 happened. Suddenly, real-time reconnaissance over denied territory mattered again. They tried to restart the program. Too late. The tooling was gone. Some decisions can't be reversed. The SR-71's retirement was dramatic. The A-7 Corsair II's was quietly short-sighted. It delivered ordnance with computer-assisted accuracy before precision-guided munitions became standard. Its subsonic speed made it vulnerable in high-threat environments, but that same characteristic gave it exceptional loiter time and fuel efficiency. The Navy retired it in 1991, the Air Force in 1993. The A-10 survived because the Air Force needed a close air support platform. The A-7 died because carriers needed deck space. But Greece flew them until 2014. They understood that not every mission requires supersonic speed. The Sea Harrier FA-2 proved vertical takeoff wasn't just a gimmick when it dominated the Falklands War. Its Blue Vixen radar was among the most capable ever fitted to a fighter. But the Royal Navy chose the F-35B instead, retiring the Sea Harrier in 2006. The gap lasted a decade. Britain operated carriers without fixed-wing aircraft for 10 years because budget planners assumed the F-35 would arrive on schedule. It didn't. Argentina noticed. Some capabilities shouldn't have gaps measured in decades. The F-117 Nighthawk owned the first night of every war. Its stealth technology let it strike targets that would shred conventional aircraft. But it was subsonic, carried only 2 bombs, and required extensive maintenance. The Air Force retired it in 2008, betting the F-22 and F-35 would provide better stealth. They do. But the F-117 was already paid for and operational. The replacements cost 3 times more per flight hour. Libya, 2011, proved stealth still matters. Fewer platforms means fewer targets hit simultaneously.
The F-117 created gaps in strike capability. The S-3 Viking's retirement created gaps underwater. It hunted submarines from carrier decks for 3 decades. Its acoustic sensors and magnetic anomaly detector made Soviet subs vulnerable in open ocean. The Navy retired it in 2009, claiming submarines weren't the primary threat anymore. Then, China started building quiet diesel-electric subs. Now, carrier groups operate in contested waters without organic anti-submarine warfare capability. The P-8 Poseidon is land-based. It can't follow a carrier battle group into the Western Pacific. Chinese submarines didn't disappear. America's ability to hunt them did. America's S-3 gap was voluntary. Britain's Nimrod disaster was self-inflicted. The Nimrod Mr-2 patrolled the Atlantic for 4 decades. Britain spent billions developing the MR-A4 replacement with modern avionics and new engines. Then, the 2010 Strategic Defense Review cancelled it to save money. The entire fleet was scrapped, some aircraft destroyed with single-digit flight hours. Britain now leases P-8 Poseidons from Boeing. The capability gap lasted 9 years. Russian submarines operated freely in British waters during that time. Britain discovered that saving £2 billion created a £10 billion problem. The F-22 Raptor was designed to replace the F-15 one-for-one. The Air Force wanted 750. Congress approved 187. Production ended in 2011 because the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan didn't need air superiority fighters. But China and Russia kept building. Now the F-22 fleet is too small to maintain presence in multiple theaters simultaneously. Restarting production would cost billions because the tooling is gone. You can't surge produce air superiority when you need it. You either have it or you don't. The F-22 production cut reduced numbers. The Harrier GR.9 retirement eliminated a unique capability entirely. It gave the RAF vertical takeoff capability that made it independent of runways. When the 2010 defense cuts retired it, Britain lost the ability to operate fixed-wing aircraft from austere locations. The F-35B was supposed to replace it immediately. Instead, there was a 6-year gap. The Harrier fleet was sold to the US Marine Corps, who flew them for another 5 years. They understood what Britain forgot. Flexibility in basing options is a capability, not a luxury. The Jaguar GR3 was never the most advanced aircraft, but it was reliable and cheap to operate. The RAF used it for reconnaissance and ground attack until 2007. Its retirement made sense on paper. The Typhoon could do everything better. But the Typhoon costs 4 times more per flight hour. Training sorties decreased because flying became too expensive. France kept their Jaguars until 2005, and India still flies them. Sometimes, good enough is better than perfect but unaffordable. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was built around a gun that fires depleted uranium rounds through tank armor. It's slow, ugly, and the Air Force has tried to retire it for 20 years. But every time they try, the Army objects. Because when troops need close air support, they want the aircraft that can loiter for hours, take massive damage, and still bring everyone home. The F-35 can do close air support, but it can't do it for 2 hours at 200 feet. Specialization still matters. The A-10 fights retirement through Army advocacy. The OV-10 Bronco lost that battle decades ago. It was designed for counterinsurgency before anyone called it that. It flew low and slow, giving pilots time to identify targets in dense terrain. The military retired it in 1995 because precision-guided munitions made it obsolete. Then Iraq and Afghanistan happened. Suddenly, low-intensity conflict mattered again. The military borrowed OV-10s from museums for testing in 2015. They worked perfectly. But the production line was gone. Some capabilities can't be recreated when you need them. The A-4 Skyhawk was small, simple, and deadly. It cost half what other attack aircraft did and could operate from short runways or small carriers. The Navy retired it in 2003, but Argentina, Brazil, and Israel kept flying them for decades. They understood that not every mission requires a $50 million aircraft. Sometimes you need numbers more than capability. The US military forgot that lesson. Now every platform is exquisite and expensive, and there aren't enough of them. While attack aircraft fought for relevance, electronic warfare platforms faced a different challenge. The EA-6B Prowler jammed enemy radars for 4 decades. When the Navy retired it in 2019, the EA-18G Growler was supposed to provide equivalent capability. But the Growler carries fewer jamming pods and has shorter range. The Prowler could escort deep strikes into denied airspace. The Growler operates closer to carriers, which limits strike package options. Electronic warfare isn't about newer technology. It's about coverage. The Prowler provided more of it. The Saab 37 Viggen was Sweden's answer to defending against Soviet bombers. It could operate from highway strips and be rearmed by conscripts in minutes. Sweden retired it in 2005 for the Gripen, which is more capable but requires proper air bases. The Viggen's dispersed operations concept was designed for survival in a war where air bases would be destroyed in the first hours. The Gripen is better, but it's vulnerable in ways the Viggen wasn't. Some capabilities are about doctrine, not technology. The F-106 Delta Dart was designed to intercept Soviet bombers at 60,000 feet. It could reach Mach 2.3 and carried nuclear-tipped missiles. The Air Force retired it in 1988 because the bomber threat had diminished. But the F-106 was also the last dedicated interceptor. Everything after it was a multirole fighter. When you design for everything, you optimize for nothing. The F-106 did one thing perfectly. Modern fighters do many things adequately. There's a difference. The F-106's American retirement was echoed across the Atlantic when Britain faced the same choice. The Tornado ADV was Britain's answer to Soviet bombers crossing the North Atlantic. Its long-range radar and sky-flash missiles could engage targets 100 miles away. The RAF retired it in 2011 for the Typhoon. The Typhoon is better at air superiority, but it's also needed for ground attack, which means it's not always available for interception. The Tornado ADV had one job. The
The Typhoon has 5. Specialization creates availability. Multirole creates compromises. The F-4 Phantom II fought in Vietnam, the Middle East, and the Cold War. The US military finally retired its last F-4s in 2016, 58 years after the first flight. But they weren't fighters anymore. They were QF-4's target drones, the final indignity for an aircraft that once ruled the skies. The last operational US AF-F-4s retired in 1996, the Navy and Marines in 2004. But Iran, Turkey, and South Korea still fly them operationally. They can't afford to retire capability just because it's old. America can, until it can't. The B-58 Hustler was the first supersonic bomber. It could reach Mach 2 and deliver nuclear weapons deep into Soviet territory. But it was expensive, complex, and had a terrible safety record. The Air Force retired it in 1970, after just 10 years of operational service. ICBMs made high-speed bombers obsolete for nuclear delivery. But the B-58's speed would be valuable today for conventional strike. China and Russia are developing hypersonic weapons. America retired its supersonic bomber 50 years ago. The F-104 Starfighter was a missile with a man in it. It could reach Mach 2 and climb like nothing else. But its high wing loading made it unforgiving. The US retired it in 1969, but Allies flew it for decades. Italy didn't retire theirs until 2004. The F-104 was dangerous, but it was also fast and cheap. Modern fighters are safer, but cost 10 times more. Sometimes you need quantity. The F-104 provided that. Modern procurement doesn't. The SR-72 was supposed to be Britain's supersonic strike aircraft. It could fly at Mach 2, penetrate Soviet defenses, and deliver nuclear weapons with precision. The prototypes flew perfectly. Then the 1965 Defense Review cancelled it to save money. Britain bought the F-111 instead, then cancelled that order too. The SR-72 tooling was destroyed to prevent the program from restarting. 50 years later, defense analysts still call it the greatest aircraft Britain never built. Some decisions haunt nations for generations. Britain's SR-72 mistake was echoed across the Atlantic, but Canada's version was worse. The Avro Arrow was Canada's supersonic interceptor designed to stop Soviet bombers over the Arctic. It was faster and more advanced than anything America had. Then the 1959 budget crisis killed it. The government ordered every prototype destroyed. Engineers were fired. The entire aerospace industry collapsed. Canada never built another fighter. They buy American now. The Arrow's cancellation wasn't just about one aircraft. It was about abandoning an entire industrial capability. Some decisions can't be reversed. The XB-70 Valkyrie was designed to fly at Mach 3 at 70,000 feet, outrunning Soviet interceptors. It was the most ambitious bomber ever conceived. But ICBMs made strategic bombers obsolete for nuclear delivery. The program was cancelled in 1961. Only 2 prototypes were built. One crashed. The other is in a museum. But the XB-70's technology influenced everything from the B-1 to the SR-71. Sometimes cancelled programs matter more for what they teach than what they deliver. While the XB-70 influenced future designs, the RAH-66 Comanche simply disappeared. It was supposed to be the Army's stealth helicopter. It could scout ahead of formations, invisible to radar. The Army spent $7 billion over 20 years. Then Afghanistan happened. Counterinsurgency didn't need stealth helicopters. The program was cancelled in 2004. But now, the Army is developing the Future Attack Reconnaissance Aircraft. It's basically the Comanche with a different name. 20 years and billions of dollars were wasted because doctrine changed. Now, doctrine is changing back. The F-23 Black Widow II competed against the F-22 for the Air Force's Advanced Tactical Fighter contract. It was faster, stealthier, and had longer range. But the F-22 was more maneuverable. The Air Force chose the F-22 in 1991. The F-23 prototypes went to museums. But engineers who worked on both programs still argue the F-23 was the better aircraft. It was optimized for the future fight, long-range stealth strikes. The F-22 was optimized for dogfighting. Which threat materialized? Both F-23s still exist. The tooling doesn't.